Okay, we're learning Tractate Eruvin, page Nun Hey 55. The name of the chapter is Ketzad Me'abrin. Continuing, start with the top of the page. The words V'ayinu d'omar avdim v'archam v'odei samai dichti lo b'shamayim v'lo mever layami. Doesn't mean the Torah is not in the heavens nor across the ocean. Lo b'shamayim is not in the heavens. If it's in the heavens, you would be required to go up to the heavens in pursuit of it. And if it's across the ocean, you would have to cross the ocean in pursuit of it. We see from this that one has an obligation to devise and pursue whatever strategy is necessary to obtain Torah knowledge. This is the source for the obligation to devise mnemonics to aid in remembering the Torah's teaching. The Torah scholarship will not be found in one who believes his mind towers over it like the heavens. No, will it be found in one who believes his mind is as broad as the ocean in relation to it. He believes his mind is sufficiently large to accommodate the Torah with ease. So in other words, doesn't put effort. It is not in the heavens. Scholarship will not be found in those who are haughty or arrogant, and it is not across the ocean. Torah scholarship will not be found in traveling businessmen nor with peddlers. So we're going back to the discussions of Eruv. Ketzad Me'abrin es He'orim. How do we extend the boundaries of cities when establishing the Tchum? Extending the boundaries. If the town is long, rectangular, we leave it as it is. It is not extended. We don't extend it. Agula, if it's round, circular, we make corners for it. You can see in the diagram how they make corners to it, making it square. Merubas, but if the town was already square in its borders, we do not make corners for it. If it was wide on one side and narrow on the other side, you can see in the diagram also, wide and narrow. We thinking of it as if it's even. The diagram shows you it's as if it's square. If one house protrudes like a tower. You can see also in the diagram, or the second diagram next to it shows you how the town is like square and suddenly two houses are protruding. So we view them as a string were stretched over them. We draw the perimeter as a line stretching past the house, perpendicular to it and parallel to the city's wall. And one measures 2,000 amos from this imaginary string and beyond. Caches, if it was shaped like a bow, you can see the diagram also, gam, or like the Greek letter gamma, which looks like a inverted resh, right? Yeah. Gamma in Greek. We view the city as if it is uninhabited, as if its uninhabited section is filled with homes and courtyards. Okay, you can see the bottom diagram to the right shows you as if it's filled with homes. So one measures 2,000 amos from this filled in area, in parentheses, because it's not filled in, but we're considering it as if it's filled in. and beyond. So Amar Ma'uk Kvashi, a long city is left as it is. That was the first statement. The Gemara says, Pshito, obviously, what do you mean? What are you going to do with it? No, it is necessary to teach this ruling for a city that is long in one direction but short in another direction. Its boundaries form a rectangular rather than a square. Okay? So I guess the length is greater than the width. It's not exactly even. The tema Litan lo pusya orko. Not every lot is 100 by 100. Some lots are 50 by 150 or 75 by 100. So they're not exactly width and length are not exactly the same. So in this case, it's aricho ketina. It's long but short. It's long in one direction but short in the other direction. Now the tema.
Why do you say narrow? Would it be better to say narrow?
No, because we have a case of wide city and then it becomes narrow.
Okay.
So that's a different case. It's long on one side and shorter in the other. To give it boundaries whose width is equal to its length and thereby transform it into a square. Kamashman and the Baisa says no, that you live it alone. Therefore informs us that we do not alter the city's rectangular boundaries. The Gemara says with a square we don't make corners to it. So the Gemara says, well, it's also obvious, Pshita. The Gemara answers, it is necessary to teach this ruling when it is square, but its square is not aligned with the directions of the world. Its sides do not face due north, south, east, and west. Now the tema, you might have said, that it should be squared again to align it with the directions of the world by circumscribing a larger square around the present square. Kamash the Vice informs that we don't mess with it, that this is not done. Basically, it's a square, you live it a square. If one house was protruding, we said that we make a line, imaginary line. We view them as if a string was stretched over them. The Gemara assumes that both houses protrude along the same side of the city. The Gemara therefore questions the necessity of the second case. What's the difference between, if you already said about one house, why do you need to tell me about two houses? If you're stretching an imaginary line with one house, it's obvious that you do so with the two houses. You said one house, two houses, you don't need to tell me. It is necessary to teach this ruling when the two houses protrude on two sides of the city. Let's say only, you might have said that when the house protrudes on one side, we say that the city's boundary is extended to include it. But when the houses protrude on two sides, we do not say that both boundaries should be extended. Kamashma, the Baisa informs us that we extend the city even in two directions. You see the case of two directions, you can see it in the diagram in 21. It shows you how the protruding is being done in two directions, and we're still stretching imaginary line on each one.
Right.
Wonderful. If the city was shaped like a gam or bow, we see it as if it's full with houses. And he measures 2,000 amas from there. In a city built like a bow, if there is less than 4,000 amas between its two ends, if you look at the diagram to the left in 24, it shows like how there is, or even 25, it shows like 4,000 amas, 3,999, meaning it doesn't have 4 amas. If there is less than 4,000 amas between its two ends, so we measure the tichum for it from the imaginary bowstring. But if not, i.e., if the distance between the ends of the bow is 4,000 amas or more, we measure the tichum for it from along the bow itself. Ravuna indeed say this. If a city's wall was breached, it is still treated as one city up to a gap of 141 and third amis, as long as the gap does not exceed 141 and third amis. 141 1/3, the two sections of the city are still viewed as one city. We see from this that Rav, you see how the picture, the diagram in 27, it shows you how like there's a little 141 and 1/3 amis in between.
Right.
That's called the Ir Shenifritz. The Chomas was breached. It was a breach of 141. So Rav Huna, we see from this that Rav Huna sets the maximum open area that may separate sections of a single town is 141 and 1/3 amis, and not 4,000 amis, as stated in the case of the bow-shaped city. Here, in the case of the bow-shaped city, it is open only on one side, but connected on the other side. Therefore, Rav Huna deems it one uninterrupted area, even with a gap along one side of the city of up to 4,000 amas. Kan mishtiruchas, here in the case of the city that was breached, it is open on both sides, leaving an unpopulated gap completely through the city. Since the city is completely divided by the gap, the two sides are viewed as separate towns once the gap exceeds 141 amas. And if so, what is Rav Huna informing us? That we grant an extension of Karpaf. That we grant an extension of Karpaf to this section of the bridge city, and an extension of a Karpaf to this section. So the 141 amis may separate them without dividing them into two towns. Rav Huna has already said that none. He already said it once. We grant a karpaf to a city. Remember, karpaf was an open field.
Yeah.
We open. It says in number 1, an open area the size of karpaf, 70 2/3 amas to each of the town's boundaries. 2,000 amatchum is measured from the end of that karpaf. The reason for this extension is discussed in the Gemara 57a. They said the rule of karpaf only between two cities. Ve'itma Rav Huna Omar karpaf lezu. The sages grant a karpaf to this city and a karpaf to this city. Up to 141 amas may separate the two cities, and they are still considered as one. We grant only a single karpaf for both cities. Rav Huna already stated his opinion that a gap of less than 141 amis and 1/3 amis between cities may be disregarded in the laws of Tichum. Why then was it necessary for him to state that a city may be breached by up to 141 and 1/3 amis without losing its status as a single city? And was it tzarich for if he had informed us here in the case of the breached city, we may have assumed that only in this case it is viewed as one, mishum da'aval tzad heto meikol, because it originally had a permissible status when it was undivided. Initially, it was not breached; it was one city. Aval but there, in the case of two independent cities, which were never a single entity, I would have said that no such leniency is permitted, and therefore he comes to tell us that it is. V'yeshmin also, or if he had informed us there. In the case of two independent cities, we might have assumed that they are viewed as one only in that case, mishum dechika tashmishtayu, because the use of its curtailed, because the use of it is curtailed if we allow them anything less than a karpaf apiece. So, number 4, normally resident of a town requires 70 and 2/3 ames around the town for their activities. Curtailing the space would deprive them of the normal additions to a city. Since each city requires this amount of space around it, that space is considered part of the town according to Avuna. Consequently, two towns separated by 141 and 1/3 ames actually adjoin and are therefore considered one. But here, where the use of it is not curtailed, even if there is less than a karpaf for each, since there had been no open area at all prior to the breach, I might have said that no such leniency is permitted. It was therefore necessary for Avuna to teach both rulings to make it clear that in all circumstances we allow up to 141 and 1/3 ames between inhabited area before considering them separate towns. And how much may there be between imaginary bowstring and the middle of the bow, and yet allow us to view the uninhabited section of the city as filled with houses? A maximum of 2,000 ames. If the distance is greater, one would have to travel or to traverse a full techum before reaching the bowstring. In such a case, the measure cannot begin from the bowstring. Even if it is more than 2,000 ames from the bow to the bowstring, the gap is viewed as completely filled with houses. The opinion of Rabbi, the son of Rabbi Ravuna, seems more likely. For if someone wishes, he can walk around by way of the houses. He can reach the area of the bowstring by walking through the town to its tip. Therefore, the distance between the center of the bow and the bowstring should not disrupt the closing of the intervening area. The Gemara returns to the Mishnah that began this chapter and explained the next section of it. The Mishnah stated, if there were ruins there 10 tfachim high, they extend the boundary of the city. My gedudiyos, the Gemara said, what does it mean, ruins? Dilapidated dwellings or dilapidated structures. What are the ruins that are considered sufficient to extend a city's boundaries? 3 walls that have no roof over them. If a ruin has only 2 walls that have no roof over them, what is the law? Does this also extend the boundary? These structures beyond the city's boundaries, beyond a city boundary, are included with a city in its extension. So he says they are. Is a tomb building which contains an area of 4x4 ames, and a bridge or graveyard which contains a dwelling area, and a synagogue which contains a dwelling place for the chazan, the sexton, and an idolatrous temple which contains a dwelling place for the priest. And stables and silos in the fields, which contains a dwelling place, and the huts in the field, and a house on an island in the sea. All these are included with a city in its extension. The city's boundaries are extended to include them. A tomb building which was breached on two of its sides, here through there, so that only two walls remain. And a bridge or a graveyard that does not contain a dwelling, it does not contain a dwelling place. And a synagogue that does not contain a dwelling place for the chazan. An idolatrous temple that does not contain a dwelling place for the priest. Stables, silos, fields which do not contain a dwelling place, and a cistern, ditch or cave, and a fence, and a dovecote that are in the field, and a house on a boat. These are not included with a city in its extension. A tomb building which was breached on two of its sides, from here through there, is not considered a structure sufficient to extend a city. Is the Baisa not dealing with a building that has a roof? We see that a structure of two walls covered by a roof is not sufficient to extend the boundary. The Gemara says, perhaps we are dealing with a case in which it does not have a roof, and this is therefore not a valid proof. The Gemara now elaborates on other sections of the Baisa. The Baisa stated that a house on an island is considered a dwelling. What can a house on the sea be used? The Baisa refers to the building in which the ship's utensils are stored when they are removed from the ship until further use. This is a significant enough use for the building to be reckoned as an extension of the city. Baisa stated that a cave is not considered a viable dwelling to extend a city. Is a cave not included with a city in its extension? A cave is included with it in its extension. Where there is a building over the mouth of the cave, which renders it a dwelling. A cave by itself, however, is not considered a dwelling. If so, consider it a dwelling because of the building itself. The cave is inconsequential to the dwelling status. It is necessary in a case in which the cave is required to complete the minimum 4 ames by 4 ames, necessary to be considered a dwelling. The Gemara cites another ruling concerning the Tchum law of nominal living quarters. Amar Abuna Yosh v'tzrifin, hut dwellers. We measure their Tchum for them only from the doors of their homes, and not from the end of their town. A community of these temporary huts does not constitute a town, and each resident must therefore measure his 2,000 amas from his hut. They camped alongside the Yadin from Beis HaShemesh until Ovel Hashiti. So, Masiv of Chisda says in the book of Numbers 33:49, they camped alongside the Yarden from Beis HaShemesh until Ovel Hashiti. I saw that place, and it It is 3 parsa by 3 parsa in area. When they relieve themselves, they would not go to relieve themselves in an area ahead of them or in an area alongside of them. They always went to the back. Someone at the front of the camp would have to walk over 3 parsois to reach the latrine area behind the camp. But since the camp consisted of only temporary dwellings or domiciles, if the tchum is measured from the door of each tent, he should not have been permitted to walk that distance on Shabbos. Since it says by Hashem, by the word of God, they would camp, by the word of God, they would travel, it's considered as if they had a permanent encampment. In general, however, a community of temporary dwellings does not constitute a town. If there are at least 3 courtyards or 2 houses, they are established and are reckoned as part of the town for measuring the tchum. 3 courtyards, 2 houses. Hot dwellers and desert travelers, their lives are not lives. These people lead a nomadic existence, taking their wives with them and living in temporary dwellings. Shepherds usually inhabit huts, staying for a month or 2 to exploit the pasture and then moving on. The wives and children are not their own. The Gemara explained below. Tanya Nami Achi. Eliezer of Beria said, hot dwellers are like grave dwellers. And about their daughters, the Pasuk says, cursed is he who lies with animal. Their daughters are illegitimate and prohibited in marriage. It says in number 38, this confirms the earlier statement that their children and wives are not there because their wives commit adultery. My time because they do not have bathhouses nearby. So this forces the men to travel a distance to a bathhouse, leaving the women of the community alone and prey to immoral men. The camp is left without any men, making it safe for strange men to visit and sit with them. Because they notice when the women travel to immerse in a mikvah. Since the mikvah is far away, the women form groups to travel together. The neighbors notice the activity, and an immoral man can follow them and meet them along the road. What is the difference between these 2 reasons? The difference between them is in a case where a river near their home, since under the proper conditions a river is suitable for immersions, there would be no need for the woman to travel. The men, however, still would need to journey to a nearby city for a bathhouse. Torah scholar, any city that does not have vegetables available in it, a Torah scholar may not reside in it. Does it mean that vegetables are beneficial? 3 things increase a person's excrement and cause his posture to stoop, and take away 1/500th of a person's eyesight. And these are paskevo, coarse bread, v'sheichel chodesh, and fresh beer, v'york, and vegetables. So we see the vegetables are considered unhealthy. Why then does Rav Huna recommend them for a Torah scholar? This statement of Rav Huna refers to garlic and leek, which are healthful, and this statement of the Baisa refers to other vegetables which are not healthful. Tanya shumyol krishin chatyog no niratzon nirasam chaim. Says a garlic is a vegetable healthful, and leeks are healthful. Half vegetables, only half as healthful. If a radish appears, a medicine has appeared, and I guess radishes are considered very good, a drug of life. Okay, so
Are we still
Buchum to you.
going to take these to your house?